Hi, I'm Delina Amsters from the Hopkins Centre. Welcome to this presentation about conceptual frameworks. What are they and how are they useful for rehab practitioners? I'd like to get started by telling you my thoughts about what makes up a conceptual framework. I think in essence they're really simple. They're just a group of ideas, or we could call them concepts, hence conceptual framework. And there's some kind of implied relationship between those concepts, and they all work together to create some sort of perceived outcome. So that's basically it. That's what a conceptual framework is. The best ones are really simple. The best ones are represented by really simple diagrams, and the best ones, I believe, are really good communication tools. I like to think about a conceptual framework as being like a city. So the individual buildings in the city are like the concepts or ideas, and they're kind of linked together with a street network and all the telecommunications. And when they function together, they create a place that people can live and work. And just like a city, I guess a conceptual framework is always a bit of a work in progress. So buildings can be demolished, or concepts can be demolished, and new ones can take their place. So they're constantly evolving. I thought I'd ease you into the world of conceptual frameworks by starting with a conceptual framework that actually doesn't come from the world of rehab. It's this framework. It's a really simple framework for appreciating a work of art. Now, I found this on a Year 7 assignment website, and the teacher had posted this as a way of guiding his students as to how to complete their assignment about a particular chosen artwork. So if we think about those components of a conceptual framework, if we think about those ideas or concepts, obviously in this art appreciation framework we've got the artist down the bottom here. We've got their interaction with the audience. We've got the interaction of both with the world at large, and what we end up with is an artwork. And of course the outcome from the use of this framework is an appreciation of an artwork. So if it's good enough for the Year 7s, it's good enough for me. Let's give it a crack. This is an interesting artwork that I found that I think is relevant for our topic today about rehab. And I thought, using the concepts in the framework, the art appreciation framework, I'd just take you through some of the things that I've learnt about this painting. So first, about the artist. The artist is Riva Lira, and Riva has spina bifida. She spent a lot of her childhood in and out of hospital and had a number of radical spinal surgeries. She was really interested in anatomy, and she has really followed through this theme in her work, that she wants to depict the human form, but she wants to particularly depict physical difference. In terms of the world that Riva grew up in was very critical to influencing this artwork. So she was born in the US in the 50s and was right in the midst of the disability rights movement. So she wanted to and wants to use her art to challenge the notion of the so-called normal body. In terms of the audience, Riva has been critically acclaimed for her work in relation to disability and uncovering the unseen. So showing bodies in ways that maybe people haven't seen before. And she's been critically acclaimed for doing this. And what about the artwork itself? Well, the subject of the artwork is Susan Nussbaum. Now, Susan herself clearly has a physical disability, and she has a spinal cord injury, and she is also a playwright. So some of the objects you can see floating around might start to make sense, and these heavy drapes, and you can now start to conceptualize that as being a stage. Now, Susan, like Reva, uses her art to challenge people's notion of disability. And Reva has followed this through in a theme in a number of her works called the Circle Stories, where she's really tried to get into the lives of other people with disabilities, but people who are also artists and also trying to make a statement about disability. So there's lots more in this painting that I could talk about. If you're interested in knowing more about Reva Lira, she's just written a biography, and it's called Gollum Girl, just released last year. So what I wanted to show you by using the framework and showing you this artwork is that the framework provides a vehicle for communication. It gives a way of systematically thinking about and communicating about the artwork. But today's presentation is not about art, so I probably should move on to some conceptual frameworks in rehab. So what is the most prominent conceptual framework in rehab? Well, it's probably the ICF, the International Classification for Functioning, Disability and Health. It's been with us now since 2001, and it sparked a lot of debate about human functioning and how it is influenced, and it's been picked up a lot by disability and rehabilitation researchers as a backdrop for their research. But how is it useful clinically? Before I go on to that, I just want to unpack the framework using that same concept that I started with, that conceptual frameworks are really just three things. So they're concepts, they're relationships, and they are an outcome. So let's look at the concepts. So we've got the function concepts here in the middle of the ICF. So these are ideas about what constitutes human functioning. So we've got the functioning at the level of the body, we've got the functioning through activities of daily living, and we've got functioning through participating in life. Now, the other ideas in the ICF are about things that influence that function. So at the top here, we've got the health condition. And when you think about health condition, we're talking about illness or injury or disease processes. Down here, we've got two other things that influence people's function. First of all, the environmental factors. So when we think about that, we're not only thinking about the physical environment, we're thinking about the social environment, the support environment, and all sorts of things about the world and the context in which people find themselves. And then finally, we've got these personal factors, and that's really a big black box that the ICF and its creators would admit is not very well articulated in the ICF. So it's all sorts of things like age, gender, but it's also things like people's personality traits, their behaviours and habits. So a whole lot of things that will influence people's functioning are in that black box. So we've got all these ideas, we've got these arrows that represent all this interrelationship between the ideas, but what's the actual outcome that we're interested in when we're talking about the ICF as a framework? And I think that's one of its weaknesses. Sometimes it's not very well articulated. When we're taking the ICF at this very broad level, at the conceptual framework level, so at the widescreen, citywide view, if you think of it like that, what's the outcome? Well, I think it's a framework for understanding how a person functions in their own world. So I think that that's the essence of the outcome that this framework is addressing. There are many documented ways in which the ICF has been used practically, clinically. These are some of them. It's been used as a content guide for case conferences, as a framework for discharge summaries, as a set of headings for client reports, as an audit tool for goal planning sessions, and as an outline for rehab program planning. But I just want to share with you today a particularly clever example that I've found of the ICF shaping clinical practice. This adaptation of the ICF comes from the Conceptual Centre at McMaster University in Canada, and it's called the F Words for Childhood Disability. And I think its developers must have a good sense of humour, because they published a paper about it called The F Words for Childhood Disability. I swear this is how we should think. I'll just take you through each of the boxes in the framework here. This is how they present the framework to parents, and there's also a kids version that's more graphic than this one, has more pictures in it. So up here under body structure and function, they've chosen to highlight fitness. And I'll read you what it says. Everyone needs to stay fit and healthy, including me. Help me find ways to keep fit. Function is how they've chosen to reterm activity, to get in there another F word. I might do things differently, but I can do them. How I do it's not important. Please let me try. Participation, they've chosen to highlight friends. Having friends is important. Please give me opportunities to make friends with my peers. In environmental factors, they have really honed in on what the most important environmental factor is in the life of a child, and that is their family. They know me best, and I trust them to do what's best for me. Listen to them, talk to them, hear them, respect them. And finally, I really like this one, personal factors. They've relabeled that as fun. Life is about having fun. Please help me do the activities that I find the most fun. So that's really about respecting the individuality of the child. And they've added in this extra F word here, future. I will grow up one day, so please find ways for me to develop independence and be included in my community. Now, there's lots of examples on the website of various clinical groups using this framework for all sorts of things. I think it's really clever, and it goes to show that it's important with clinical frameworks or conceptual frameworks that we modify them so that they work in our contexts. And I just want to show you before I leave the ICF how I've modified my thinking about the ICF in a way that I find it easier to explain. So this is it. I would say your illness or injury and your environment and your individuality determines what you do and how you do it. And I think it's as simple as that. Remember, conceptual framework is about communication tools, and if we want it to be a communication tool that's suitable for us and our clients, maybe we're going to have to modify it so that it's more useful. Now, I've had it suggested to me that the only conceptual framework we need for delivering rehabilitation is the ICF. Well, I don't agree. I think there's room and a definite need for many more conceptual frameworks to make us think deeply about the way we deliver services. So, to finish off this presentation, I just want to briefly introduce you to the framework that I've had some involvement in developing. It's the HERE framework. And the outcome that this framework is related to is promoting participation in life after spinal cord injury. If we look at the ideas involved in this framework, we've got these three here: help, encourage, and accept. So helping the person with spinal cord injury in various ways, encouraging them or coaching them in various ways, but also very importantly, accepting their individuality. Down here we've got the other part of the framework that really has to be working if all of the above are going to have any impact, and that is responsive communication between the rehab professional and the person with spinal cord injury. Now, there are many more layers to this framework, but I'd like to keep them for another presentation. So, quickly, a recap. What we've looked at in this presentation. First of all, we looked at the components of a conceptual framework, which I believe are the ideas or concepts, the relationships between them, and the outcome they relate to. I liken conceptual frameworks to a city, so it's a city-wide view. It's all about the big picture, and it's not about the individual buildings. I showed you this conceptual framework for appreciating art, and we had a go at using that as a way of easing you into conceptual frameworks. Then we looked at the most well-known framework that's used in rehabilitation, that's the ICF, and I showed you how one particular group has modified the ICF to make it work better for them, and that was the F words for childhood disability. I quickly explained to you about how I would change how you use the ICF as a communication tool by really simplifying it down to its bare bones. And I've just given you a glimpse into the framework that I've been involved in developing for promoting participation in life after spinal cord injury, and that is the HERE framework. For now, thanks for watching.